Welcome to Watch the Booker Man and to the continuation of our rebuild of WCW here in August 2001. We have just got into August with last night's show being on the 1st of August, but what I didn't spot before or after that show was that we again made a loss last month. Now it's only $27,000, so I'm not massively concerned. We have plenty of money in the bank, and when we run pay-per-views, we do make a hell of a lot of money. It's probably a case that we're never ever going to be in financial difficulties, but it is just something to keep an eye on, I suppose. And I did notice, I was just looking at what the sort of outgoings could be, and I noticed that we do actually have a training facility at the power plant that's running, and that actually costs us $191,000 to run per month. So obviously we'd have been in a profit if we didn't have this open, and I'm not entirely sure of the benefit to it at this point. Will any new people come through the power plant? I don't really want generated people who aren't real wrestlers to come through, because obviously this is an alternative history timeline rather than actually having new wrestlers as you would in a modern era mod. And if I actually read what it says, there are some surprise graduates set. Feel free to use the editor to look them up, so I'm not actually going to look into that, but that is pretty cool to be fair. So I don't necessarily think I'm ever going to need to upgrade or anything, because I think the people who come through are the people who are going to come through regardless. But that does mean that the $191,000 that it's going to cost us, I'm just going to have to sort of bite the bullet and deal with that. Another thing with us completing our first month that had a full schedule of shows is to look at the battles. And yeah, I'm showing this because I noticed that TCW beat us in regional battles, and I'm pretty sure it's in every region that both companies qualify for that. Obviously Puerto Rico's a little bit different, but we are below like USA Pro in the tri-state. I'm not sure how it works because the Sandman's on our roster, but he doesn't contribute to our star quality, whereas he does contribute to theirs, and we've got people way more over than some of them, so I don't know how that works. Again, I don't really care to look into it, so if anybody can explain it to me, fair enough. But of course, when it comes to the area battles, we're absolutely miles away, but these are the fun things to track. Again, like I've said previously, I just kind of book my own shows and sort of accept it for what it is. Here, because we're trying to present this as a journey of rebuilding WCW, I do think it's going to be interesting to see us close that gap, to hopefully see us get better than these regional promotions that we're going up against. The way to do that is to put on good shows, and I think this show is actually, in terms of the build, our best show so far. And I'm just going to go through our storyline heat, because we've got a very hot storyline with the Extreme Outsiders, and that's obviously sort of involving the Natural Born Killers now. The Family Legacy one is understandably extremely cold, but the Generation of Innovation is very hot too, so I'm really pleased to see that we are now starting to get a bit better in terms of the consistency of our storylines. Of course, the Vader one, we've not done much with it yet, so it's going to be cold, but I think when we build Vader up, we are going to get more heat to that. Natural Born Thrillers, similar to the Extreme Outsiders in how those two storylines have converged. Again, the Cruiserweight one's to be expected because we had some pretty poor matches in there, but the US title one is hot, and the World Heavyweight Championship storyline is extremely hot, which I'm very, very pleased to see, because it's not been great for Buff Bagwell, and it's kind of been built as a foregone conclusion. So the fact that we do have some heat to it does make me very, very happy. But with me doing the negotiations for new signings on the previous show, I will just go through now to New Blood Rising, complete any signings, and just let you know if anything interesting pops up. Now, a lot of WWF people are appearing to look abroad, so I don't know what's happening in that company that's made everybody make this decision right now. But K Crush, who is he on my shortlist? Because if not, he should be. Even Kurt Angle's looking abroad, so doesn't seem like people are all that happy in the WWF at the minute. Ron Harris has gone, thankfully. The second departure from the company other than the Wall that we've done so far. His brother is going to follow very, very soon. But like I said, it's a really good show. We've got Buff Bagwell v Booker T, with Booker T obviously defending the World Heavyweight Championship, and then we have got Lance Storm versus Rob Van Dam for the United States Championship, which I think could well be the best match that we've booked so far. We've then got the Cruiserweight title match, Sugar Shane versus Super Crazy versus Yoshihiro Tajiri, and while the storyline heat might not be up there, I'm just really looking forward to what I think would be an absolutely fantastic match, to be fair. And then we've got the World Tag Team Titles match, an Extreme Rules match between Hardcore Hack and Tommy Dreamer, unofficially known as the Extreme Outsiders, and their opponents, the World Tag Team Champions, Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare. Now, we are completing two signings here, and while Domri does have some heat with Francine, I'm not sure what that's about, and frankly, I don't really care. She's coming in, as is Bob Sapp, and despite him apparently being better as a face, Bob Sapp will be coming in as a heel. The Beast, a dominant gimmick. It got a great rating last time, so we'll apply that, and we'll be happy for him to start off with the Beast gimmick. Of course, he did appear in the Big Bang Battle Royal for the number one contendership for the World Heavyweight title. However, he will not be the person answering Diamond Dallas Page's Open Challenge. As is often the case when I try and bring people in, I do get a little bit nervous when we get to sort of within 48 hours of the show and they've not yet signed, so I'm crossing my fingers. He's really making me sweat here, isn't it? Rob Van Dam wins the best overall worker in wrestling today. Now that is a big claim. He's only got like 50-ish popularity in the US, but apparently he's the best all-round wrestler, so well, it kind of makes sense. It is an internet fan poll, and in 2001 he was very much a fan favourite, but we do only have 24 hours left now. Slight concern as to whether Kurt Hennig will be signing or whether I'm going to have to pivot and so it looks like, thankfully, we are going to be okay. Kurt Hennig signing, and I do think I'll make him a heel. We are on show day for WCW Nitro New Blood Rising. No people giving the night off tonight, all hands on deck. And the way I'm just going to do this, I'm just going to go to the places where we've not been yet. So last week we did there. The Midwest can get the show, and we will select the best option, which has been a generic venue apparently. The booking team meeting sees us with 160 stored creative energy. We do have a creative finish that I'm probably going to use on the main event, but I am going to try and get one more creative finish, because even if we don't use it tonight, it can be stored for future use or just discarded. A safe bet with no restrictions, so 100% keeping that, and it is good until the end of March. And now I do still want to try and get a character idea that will improve the morale of some of the people who aren't happy. It's a bit of a gamble, but I am going to keep it because I think maybe Mike Awesome, who's only slightly annoyed, it could be good to give him that. And with 70 creative energy left, I could use an angle idea, but I think I'm going to go angle idea. And that is a bit of a gamble for Booker T, so it's probably not going to be used. But again, I'll keep it because I'm not, there might be segments where I'm happy to take that risk. I'm not even going to read these out unless I think they're particularly interesting, because I don't really think they need talking through every single week. Rob Van Dam has come to us with a creative finish, which I'm really happy with. That will be used on his match tonight. Fit Finlay did the pre-show training drills. Hack owns his own bar, and he's obviously bringing that atmosphere to the backstage with a discarded karaoke machine and a pre-show competition. So some good notes, some bad notes. Is it too early to inspire still? Apparently so. So what should I do? I'll do an open forum and see what happens. Mike Awesome's happy. So yeah, that seemed to work. I'll see if it's actually affected them in any way. So Fit Finlay, those two still have some morale issues, but has it taken them? No, they're still annoyed, I think, both of them. But Mike Awesome is now back to neutral morale, so that did work actually. I'm surprised. I'm not really a common user of those backstage things, but it is really good to see that they can work to your benefit, and this is the full roster that we're working with tonight. Between being on the pre-show and some backstage segments, I am thinking that almost everybody is going to get used tonight with those 4 matches and DDP's Open Challenge books. I'm really looking forward to booking this show, actually probably the episode that I've most looked forward to, so hopefully once it's booked, you two will want to join me and see what's going down on the other side for WCW Nitro New Blood Rising. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a better show than our first special, which was the Great American Bash. But yeah, I'll see you on the other side. So the show is in the game now. We've got 3 people not being used tonight. That is Big Van Vader, the rename made after somebody put a comment in. This is WCW, he's Big Van Vader. That is absolutely fair enough. Jimmy Hart, obviously his manager, if Vader's not there, he's not going to be used. And Kui Wee, even keeping him off pre-show stuff to sell the effects of Buff Bagwell's attack on him last week. Remember, we did that whole Buff Bagwell serious, intense competitor thing last week, so it'd be a little bit underselling it to have Kui Wee on the show again. So let's get into New Blood Rising, beginning with the pre-show matches. And we start by flinging a load of guys out there. Hugh Morrus, Lash LaRue and the Mamalukes are defeated by Kanyon, Matt Jindrak and Storm Jet. Again, I am thinking of changing Devon Storm to Crowbar, so I'm not sure if they could be Bar Jet Bar. Yeah, nothing quite works there. Maybe we won't use a pun, but they defeat Hugh Morrus, Lash LaRue and the Mamalukes, 5 minutes and 58. Kanyon, the most established guy of these 8, maybe Hugh Morrus a close second, with a flatliner to Lash LaRue. He puts in a decent performance as well, actually, and that's quite annoying that it advances storylines because it's a pre-show match, so why would it affect the heat of something that the whole world's seeing? Anyway, I'm not going to worry too much about that. That's probably my fault, to be fair, for not double checking stuff like that. The Young Dragons then defeat 3 Count and Romeo and Skipper, and it's continuing basically that the Cruiserweight division isn't being booked maybe as it should be, or we're not finding enough space for them. Again, we get to 3 months in. I think a B show will do really good things. A high spots match, Kid Romeo, the weak link, maybe he's not got the same flying ability as these guys. Evan Courageous, pinned by Jimmy Yang, and I gave Jimmy Yang the victory because he is absolutely delightful backstage, absolutely love the guy. And then Chavo defeats Jamie Noble in 5 minutes 56 with a brainbuster. Again, okay from Chavo Guerrero. There's definitely stuff to build on with him. Noble does okay also. I'm trying to think what size he was around this time. Could we speak to him, maybe try and get him to bulk up? Because I think Jamie Noble, there's obvious comparisons to somebody else who started in a cruiserweight, junior heavyweight role and then bulked up and became a heavyweight. So I'm thinking, is it possible that Jamie Noble, with him not really fitting in the cruiserweight division just yet, could he be somebody who goes into the United States division, etc.? I probably need an idea for him before I do that, but it is an idea to maybe ask him to bulk up above that, I think it's 225 weight limit, or at least get closer to the other people. WCW Nitro New Blood Rising begins with the commentators introducing viewers to the show, hyping this special episode as we see footage of various competitors arriving at the building earlier today, and it's one of them where you just want to test the pops as you put them on screen. DDP is first through the door, a consummate professional. We also see Rob Van Dam arriving slightly later, while the World Heavyweight Champion Booker T arrived, the title over his shoulder, ready for his title defense tonight. Back to the commentary desk, Mike Tenay, Jerry the King Lawler and Don Callis welcome viewers to the show. Running through our card tonight, we've got 4 title matches, and Jerry Lawler reveals that there is also, perhaps even better than that, a King's Court episode. You wanted new blood, that's exactly what he is bringing, a very special guest. Before then, however, we open with the World Cruiserweight Championship match. It'll be Shane Helms defending against Yoshihiro Tajiri and Super Crazy, the two men who won 3-way matches. That is more like what we want to see from the Cruiserweight. Super Crazy's 54 is good to see as well, while Tajiri, who isn't really the high spots guy, I'd argue he might be better than Super Crazy if you talk about their all-round game, comparable to Sugar Shane even, but the matches he's in, I think the better ratings you'll get are if you go high spots rated, because the guys he's wrestling will have better aerial and flashiness skills. So it's whether you accept Tajiri not quite getting the ratings he should, and hopefully he's still building some overness, or you actually change it. And I suppose it depends what you want. When we want a match that highlights Tajiri's striking and his dominance, maybe when he's getting some wins to build him up, you do it as a regular match. But if he is wrestling Sugar Shane for the title, for example, I am probably going to keep it as a high spots match. But Sugar Shane makes a successful third defense of the World Cruiserweight Championship, hitting a vertebraker to Super Crazy, and it might be after Super Crazy is hitting, let's say, 2 of the 3 moonsaults that he does to Tajiri. So Tajiri's not getting up, but before he can hit that third one, Shane comes up behind him, gets him in the vertebraker position, and I think that would be a pretty cool finish to our opening match. Now, I did think about having one of the more high-profile matches to open the show and start it with a bit, probably of a better rating, but I just think cruiserweights in that opener position, getting the crowd up, it's just their thing, isn't it? So I didn't want to take that away, considering we are presenting this as a sort of pay-per-view type show, albeit half the length. That's why I put the segment in of the bigger names arriving earlier, because then that sort of says the stars are also here tonight, and hopefully that will keep people on the hook. Sugar Shane stands tall in the ring, having retained the World Cruiserweight Championship in a highly competitive, fast-paced match. The commentators put over the performances of the newcomers, who have quickly established their names in WCW, but say there's no doubt just yet this cruiserweight division belongs to Sugar Shane Helms. Now, I had the thought to bring somebody out here to set up the next storyline for Sugar Shane, but again, we're treating this like a bit of a pay-per-view show, so the champion's standing tall, and keeping it to a simple, this is the guy in the cruiserweight division, I think was the right choice in the end. Walking through the back, we see Diamond Dallas Page, the commentator's doing a bit of a voiceover. He will issue a new blood challenge as the next match on tonight's show. He is stopped as he confidently walks through the corridor by Mike Sanders and Reno. DDP is annoyed by their presence and asks what do they want. He's a busy man. Mike says he's going to cut the crap. DDP doesn't need to go out there and tease the fans on who this mystery man might be, because this guy, pointing at Reno, is your man. He'll see you out there in a couple of minutes. DDP, I'd say laughs at this, but it's more like just scoffs at it. No way. Mike is shocked and says why. DDP says because we've sold people on this open challenge and simply you guys suck. He then carries along his way. Reno grabbing him by the arm, trying to intimidate him, but DDP just shrugs him off. This guy's a star, and he doesn't see these guys on his level. Mike tells Reno to forget it. DDP's supposed to be the face in this scenario. I've done this quite a lot where the faces are just absolutely burying the old WCW guys, but at the same time, it's about knocking people down to build them back up always, and there's nobody here who I've given the burial treatment to, who I don't see in 6 months, 12 months being in a much better position. Arriving to the building a little later than the men shown earlier, Buff Bagwell, he's a star. He doesn't need to show up before the show begins. He's in the parking lot right now, about a quarter of the way through the show, and he gets out of his flash car and makes his way into the building. He is approached by Scott Hudson, who has been waiting because he wants to ask Buff about his chances in tonight's main event. Buff looks at Scott and says, "You saw what I did last week, right?" Scott nods before Buff turns to the camera and tells the goofs in the truck they need to find that footage. He doesn't need to speak. He doesn't need to prove himself to these people anymore. Just watch the evidence. We return to the commentators who stall for time a little bit. They talk about what Buff Bagwell did to Kiwi and then say, it sounds like we have got that footage. We see Buff Bagwell utterly destroy Kiwi, and he sent that message to Booker T ahead of tonight's main event. This isn't the guy you've been laughing at. This is a bit of a psycho, to be fair. The World Heavyweight Championship storyline does lose heat, unfortunately, but I think we should still be okay, and I've used a creative finish that is a safe bet on the main event, so I'm hoping that also boosts it up into a decent level of main event, despite what people might see as a controversial booking decision that I've gone with. Stay tuned to find out exactly what I mean by that. You've seen the thumbnail. Diamond Dallas Page comes down to the ring and cuts a promo talking about the new WCW, the new blood rising in the company. Tonight, he's not in the position that he wants to be, of course. He wanted to be the one challenging Booker T, but maybe he can put somebody else in a position that they don't want to be, namely, bang, Diamond Cutter. Before that person comes out, however, he wants to talk about his history, his place in this company and the future. He's going to watch tonight's main event closely, waiting for the winner, and he talks about the titles he's won here, United States Championship, World Championship, and he started to talk about if the worst comes to the worst, i.e. Buff Bagwell becoming the World Heavyweight Champion, and then he goes, actually, I don't want to think about this. That's not a world he wants to live in. So he calls for his opponent to come out. And while the challenger can't quite be described as new blood, he is a new face for this era of WCW, but a man who we will be very, very familiar with. DDP's open challenge is accepted by the returning Curt Hennig. Now, it's a good performance from Curt, I'll notice in the first instance. A 60 is good and plenty to work on, and a great initial rating for his arrogant. It's essentially Mr. Perfect, his gimmick, and the storyline is called Diamond's Diversion, you may have spotted that, which has heat gain to it with a 66 rated match. And what we do here is protect both men, essentially. Good heat and decent wrestling. And it was kind of one of them with testing out where Curt Hennig is. If he came with a 46 and we got a note that he was wasted on something or whatever, then the direction changes. So we didn't want to bring him in and beat DDP, obviously. But I didn't want to just bring him in squashing jobbers, because we've done that with Vader. You know, he's an established name. So I think it's okay that after we get the 7 minutes of the back and forth, Mike Sanders and Reno come out. So annoying, obviously, but this causes the DQ, preventing a clean finish. So that's where this is more of a TV show than a pay-per-view that I've said before, but they're just laying into Diamond Dallas Page as Curt Hennig is recovering from a big move from DDP on the outside. Mike Sanders and Reno, bitter at being basically looked down on by DDP, lay into him as the commentators put over their disgust that this match, this is two greats, two absolutely incredible veteran wrestlers, and it's been ruined by Sanders and Reno of all people. Callie suggests that these guys are tired of waiting their turn. He's heard the grumbles, and these guys are taking action on the most fitting night. So the heel commentator doing his very best there to try and put over Sanders and Reno, confronting Sanders. Sanders is laying into DDP. Hennig grabs him, and he's warned to back off unless he wants his return to be remembered, with him ending up just like Page right now. Hennig takes this in his stride, he kind of shrugs, but then hits Sanders with a stiff slap across the face, the type that only a veteran can give you, and it knocks him off his feet and sends him rolling to the outside. As this happens, DDP is able to get the better of Reno. Reno's eye kind of taken off the ball by what happens to his associate. We get DDP clotheslining Reno over the top rope and sending him to the outside too. DDP then looks to show respect to the returning Hennig. Perhaps it looks like we're setting up Curt Hennig and DDP versus Sanders and Reno here, with the suggestion also from DDP they should really run this back and find a definitive winner. Curt doesn't reciprocate this, however, instead shrugging, and he nonchalantly walks away up the ramp. This is part of what I want from Kurt, that he's not really interested in getting involved in this sort of playground antics. He's not getting into a back and forth thing. He's a man with a very, very specific mission in mind, and we come back after the break with Kurt Hennig shown mopping his brow in the back with his towel, and he is approached by that guy, the roving reporter Scott Hudson. Scott suggests that perhaps this wasn't the return that Hennig would have had in mind, and he's asked for his thoughts on the actions of Mike Sanders and Reno. Hennig says he didn't come back to WCW to get involved in a high school hallway fight with a couple of rookies. He's back for grown man business. As for Diamond Dallas Page, Hennig isn't here to catch up with the boys from the past, and he's not here to get wrapped up in anybody else's drama. Kurt Hennig has returned to WCW for one reason and one reason alone. When Shane McMahon made that call, he agreed to come back to WCW, but only to complete his destiny of becoming a world heavyweight champion, and he'll be watching that match with a very, very close eye. So essentially about as straightforward as a character as you can give this man. Of course he's arrogant, of course he's charismatic and fantastic in the ring, but just to give him that focus from the off, that straight direction where we don't want him meandering around the mid-card, he's here to win matches and work his way up to the World Heavyweight Championship. Returning to the ring, we see that the King's Court has been set up, and this is a good segment. I'm actually happy with that. Jerry Lawler self-promotes the preamble. He is royalty in wrestling, of course, and this leads to an introduction of a guest who understands and respects the tradition of this great sport. From one king to another, he introduces the king of old school, Steve Corino. Steve Corino makes his way down to the ring. He is carrying a belt bag. We don't see what's in the bag tonight, but he is flanked by a couple of people we haven't seen before, but they are Bob Sapp and Dawn Marie. Steve will introduce them to us later. Once in the ring, Jerry, of course, shows his interest in Dawn, but Steve makes sure that his focus is on him. Steve Corino introduced himself to the audience and says that he isn't impressed with what he's seen from the so-called New Blood Rising in this WCW. It seems that they need an injection of tradition, which is exactly what he holds in his hand. But he'll get into that another time, because tonight is about Steve Corino, tonight is about Dawn Marie, and about his personal bodyguard, Bob Sapp. Now make no mistake, this man hasn't been hired by Steve to protect himself, but it's been hired by a separate organisation to protect what belongs to him. Whether they're new blood or their old guard, Steve says that from one king to another, Jerry knows how important it is to protect one's crown. Steve Corino is what WCW has been waiting for. It'll just take them all a little bit of time to catch up on realising that's exactly what they need. But Steve Corino has never shied away from hard work, and he never will. And that's basically his introduction to the company. Dawn Marie gets an awful rating, but she's just going to stand at ringside, more or less. Probably involve herself in some matches. Bob Sapp didn't come out of this looking good, nor did Dawn Marie, but the point of these angles are to try and get these people over alongside Steve Corino, and I just think the image of those three together, I think that's a really good act that we put together, ready-made out of the box kind of thing. We did get the crowd hotter because Jerry Lawler is fantastic. You can see him just hosting the segment, got a 78, the second part only a 46, but that is where you can use Jerry. It gets us up to a 61. Once they've all left, and Jerry Lawler's leaving the ring too, Hack and Dreamer come out through the crowd. Lawler, obviously, he's talking a lot about these guys, but he doesn't want to get physical with them. And we get Dreamer and Hack. They're not waiting for their tag title match anymore, and they throw Lawler's chair to the outside, sort of get rid of his set. We're putting across the contrast there, Lawler's pomp and bravado, and the Extreme Outsiders being so down to earth and so gritty, and they're just here for a weapons match. Now, the Natural Born Thrillers come out. This is the best match we've seen from the Natural Born Thrillers so far, to be fair, and they do alright considering it's a hardcore match. And we want to do the whole cliche of the Natural Born Thrillers coming out with a trolley full of weapons. It kind of shows that they've had to bring a load of weapons together, whereas the Extreme Outsiders are sort of naturals at this by now, and we actually have the Extreme Outsiders go straight to the outside, but the referee can ring the bell because remember, this is being contested under Extreme rules tonight, so not all four men have to be in the ring for the match to start. It's a very, very different sort of approach to a wrestling match here. The Natural Born Thrillers and Extreme Outsiders just go back and forth with weapons. Now, there's sort of something, I've thought of my booking and now I'm realising there's supposed to be a moment where it's to do with Tommy Dreamer on the apron and then getting sort of interference, but it's a Extreme Rules match, so they're not doing the tag thing. So basically, we're going to end up with a situation where Hack has got Chuck Palumbo where he wants him. He's going to put him through a table, but he's asking Dreamer to go to the outside and get a steel chair or a Singapore cane, something like that. So it's Dreamer and Hack 2-on-1 on Chuck Palumbo, but when Dreamer goes to the outside, and we've heard him throughout the match just complaining about these guys, Jerry Lawler absolutely hates them, but when Dreamer is looking to get back in the ring, he is hit from behind with the crown of Jerry Lawler. So I think you get that kind of cool moment where maybe 10 seconds before this happens, considering that the commentary position is high up on the ramp, you hear the headset come off and get thrown on the ground, and it's like, what's going on? Don and Mike are doing the, what the hell is this guy doing? And it's just that Jerry Lawler's seen enough. He can see that the Extreme Outsiders are closing in on winning the WCW World Tag Team Champions, and he just can't let that happen. So he takes Dreamer out, and then Hack, he's turned around, he's shocked, but this then allows O'Haire and Palumbo to take charge, and we want Sean O'Haire, Swanton bomb through the table, and he pins Hack for the 1-2-3. So a convoluted way of explaining that, but it's that thing. We've done the bubbling under slow tease of Jerry Lawler disapproving of the Extreme Outsiders, and I kind of wanted to present it as if we're just going to expect that he's just going to be that commentator throughout the thing, but now he has decided to get himself involved in it, and we've gained heat to the storyline here. I was going to make this like a really, really long-term storyline, so we're going to have months and months of Jerry Lawler being absolutely sick and tired of watching these guys, and it finally does something, but I think sort of 5 or 6 weeks of him grumbling under his breath is enough, and it was about accelerating Natural Born Thrillers and Extreme Outsiders, like I spoke about a few weeks ago. They were both doing things that were kind of like, well, I've got this idea for them in 6 to 8 weeks, what can we do between now and then? And I thought, you know, you're establishing new acts here, you're trying to build a new company, you've just got to go for it at some point. Jerry the King Lawler doesn't return to his announced position after the match. The rest of the show is commentated by just Mike Tenay and Don Callis, although I didn't change that in game, so can we all just pretend that's what's happening? Instead, he leads through the back for his own safety. Mike Tenay and Don Callis are in shock at what's just happened. Their colleague, they never thought that he'd go beyond verbally attacking these Extreme Outsiders, or the extremely crappy wrestlers as he's been calling them. In the ring, the Natural Born Thrillers, there's no love lost between them and the Extreme Outsiders, so they don't feel bad about getting the win. They've just took it, and considering Hack and Dreamer cost them a match a couple of weeks ago, who cares? They raise their titles in the air. The focus, however, is on the extreme reaction that is going to come from Hack and Dreamer once they come to their senses, and hopefully that is a interesting jolt in the arm for those guys. I'm really looking forward to this Jerry Lawler versus the Extreme Outsider storyline, even if it seems like it's an old timer. I just think Jerry Lawler in 2001, he still had something to give, and it's again playing into what I really, really love about this scenario. Jerry Lawler, in pretty much any other scenario, you would not be positioning him in this way, but because it is so hard to find people who are over and still have something to give in the ring and don't have massive personal issues, we're actually finding that Jerry Lawler is going to be a really useful guy to occasionally use in the ring. Returning from the break, we see that during the break, Hack got back up and was sort of fully let in on what happened by Dreamer. The two men angrily approached the announce desk, throwing all the notes and monitors off it and pulling the cover of it off and marching to the back. They're just absolutely furious, and we see from the during the break part, we have a number of beeped expletives from their outburst, so they're really angry, let's put it that way. We then come to the back, and this is now live. The Extreme Outsiders are throwing tables over and causing chaos, leaving no stone unturned as they yell out, "Where is Jerry the King Lawler?" Eventually, a security team look to stop them in the path, but Hack and Dreamer begin to fight their way through them. This is when a frantic Shane McMahon arrives on the scene. He attempts to calm them down. Dreamer says, "What are you going to do about this?" Shane says, "Well, if you live by the sword, guys, you die by the sword." This only further angers them. Shane says that Lawler is long gone. He went straight to his car. He's not even in the building. Hack then points his Singapore cane towards Shane and tells him that he knows what he has to do. If they're not getting him tonight, if Jerry Lawler's sorry ass is still employed by this company next week, he needs to give them a solution. Otherwise, it's going to be a situation of them going to that announced position, dragging him away from it, and beating the ever-living crap out of him. So, stark, aggressive threats from the Extreme Outsiders, and again, these two, I think, can bring the intensity. We've got a lot of clean-cut wrestlers, I suppose, and these two are dirty and grungy and absolutely horrible men, and we position them as baby faces, even though their actions are pretty horrible, but 2001 was a crazy time. Kanyon comes down to the ring in what appears to be a non-scheduled appearance from him. The Innovator of Offense wasn't booked tonight, but he's followed by his students, Devon Storm and Jason Jett, and takes a microphone. Now this gets a 39. Kanyon is really not performing that well in segments, or the segments I'm putting him in aren't very good. Maybe I need to look at what I'm doing. He did a promo on Rob Van Dam the other week, and he got like a 46. So, yeah, there's something a little not right with Kanyon at the minute. I will look into that, but he says that it wouldn't be right for this show to go ahead without an appearance from him, the man who has pushed professional wrestling forward like nobody else before him. This is new blood rising, right? There would be no new blood if it wasn't for him, just as the two men stood beside him. RVD may have a United States Championship shot because of a fluke victory got over Kanyon a couple of weeks ago, but what Kanyon has done for the business, it's sort of more important than titles and accolades, isn't it? In fact, due to the influence that he's had on professional wrestling since he debuted, he'd argue that technically he co-holds every title in the business anyway, so absolute arrogance and egomania from Kanyon here, as this self-congratulations appears to be getting too much for even his proteges. Billy Kidman comes out, he's heard Kanyon talk and talk and talk, and he wonders if he was so good, wouldn't he have won a match in the last 5 months? I mean, 2 matches since WCW came back and he lost them both. Kanyon is kind of shocked to hear this, pulls the microphone away from Billy Kidman as if it's some secret. Kidman challenges him to end that run next week, but Kanyon says that he can do one better. He wants Kanyon to prove himself. Well, how about both Billy and that other piece of crap who ambushed him last week, Johnny the Bull? Bring it to him next week, and he will analyse their performance as he stands at ringside to watch Kidman and the Bull against Jason and Devon Storm. Now, of course, Kanyon doing everything he can to squirm out of wrestling. Booking wise, a bit silly because he's one of our better wrestlers, so I should want to use him more and more. But I'm enjoying his character, despite the fact that his segments and therefore his storyline is absolutely tanking. But here we transition things away from it being Kanyon and RVD in the storyline to being Kanyon and Billy Kidman, and a bit of Johnny the Bull in there to try and get him over as well. But speaking with Shane McMahon in his office, the Natural Born Thrillers debrief about what happened in their match with the Extreme Outsiders earlier, saying that those guys know what they're doing with weapons, but while they may have become a side story in their own title match, what happened and what matters is that they still retained these titles. McMahon says that it might be the case that they escape with the titles more than anything, but a win is a win, continuing that banter that they tend to have. Chuck asked Shane what he's going to do about Jerry and those two. That's going to be an absolute minefield to deal with, but Shane doesn't have the capacity for that tonight. Interrupting this catch-up, the two men you can see on screen already, Pete Gas and Rodney storm into the office uninvited. The first two men to jump ship to WCW from WWF, remember, and they kind of blank Chuck and Shawn and catch up with their old friend. They're like, you know, these aren't your real friends, we're your real friends. You guys need to step to the side. When MBT try to interject, Gas tells them that Shane's talking to his actual buddies. MBT laugh and tell Shane, okay, we'll leave you to it, mate, there. As if Shane's should be embarrassed by these two stooges being his friends. Shane doesn't look as enthused to see them as Gas and Rodney do to see him, especially when Rodney says that, I thought it was great when my daddy bought me a yacht. You got a whole company from under his nose. So kind of undermining what Shane's doing there by essentially saying that you got it from your dad. Shane says, what do you guys want? And they tell him that he's been a bit blunt, a bit rude. They want to chat, a catch up, the old gang back together, not hanging around with these meatheads. They can make it like old times. After New Blood Rising, how about they go out and have one of their classic posse nights? Shane understands, but tells his buddies, you know, it can't be like old times. They're like, what are you talking about? And Shane says he's got a job to do. So Gas and Rodney think this is just one big jolly. Shane throwing his power about, having a good time, making money. But Shane is, of course, dedicated to building WCW back up and hopefully further endearing Shane to the WCW audience while introducing these two guys who are utter, well, I won't use the word I want to use for them, but yeah, they're going to be really, really annoying characters. We've got quite a few of them, to be fair. Booker T is interviewed about tonight's main event and talks about how huge it is for him. Regardless of what you think of his opponent, he cannot wait to make his first title defense on WCW Nitro. And of course, he sees there is new blood rising all around him. He loves to see that. But remember, he is the 4-time World Heavyweight Champion for a reason. He admits that he's had laughs at the expense of Buff Bagwell, but who hasn't? And it looks like actually that's done Buff some good. He's realised that it's time to get serious, and the Buff Bagwell he saw last week is one that he's never seen before. So if Buff can focus on bringing that intensity and less on grooming his goatee, maybe the laughter is going to stop. Tonight though, while Booker knows that Buff has never been more serious, he's sure that it's still going to end 1, 2, 3. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And a really good promo from the WCW World Heavyweight Champion there. Thank you, Booker T, for hopefully bringing our storyline back up to being as hot as it possibly can. The challenger then makes his entrance for the United States Heavyweight Championship match, only to be jumped from behind by Mike Awesome, a segment here that gains heat to the United States Championship storyline, so really happy with that. The attack is quick and is over before anybody can react, so it's when Rob Van Dam's just doing his pose at the top of the stage and he is dragged away from the stage to the announcer's desk. Awesome hits Rob with an awesome bomb, which lays him out cold in the debris of a broken table. Mike then backs off, heading to the back, and basically the job is done, isn't it? We cut to see Lance Storm in the back, who is approached by a frantic and furious Shane McMahon. That guy is being pulled from pillar to post tonight, and he throws the book at him. He is absolutely livid. He says that he is this close from just stripping Lance Storm of that title and firing Mike Awesome. He is that pissed off. Tonight has been absolute chaos between Lawler, his commentator acting up. He's just at full capacity tonight, and he's exploding on Mike Awesome and Lance Storm. Lance kind of plays this down and says that he doesn't control what Mike Awesome chooses to do. In fact, he hasn't spoke to the guy all night. He doesn't know what that was all about. Lance says, you know what, since this match isn't going to take place now, he promises Shane he'll have a word with Mike about his actions and Shane can focus on all the other things he's got to deal with. Shane's absolutely furious. He probably wants to smack Lance Storm in the face, but that comment from Lance actually makes him think, wait, what am I going to do? I've got a United States Championship match and it's not happening. Joining Shane, Arn Anderson, once again playing that right-hand man figure, tells him he might want to come and take a look at this monitor. We then cut back to ringside, obviously Shane watching this, but we'll show it as live. RVD refuses medical help. He's holding his neck, he's holding his spine, but he pushes past EMTs and refused to be placed on a stretcher. He staggers, he stumbles and struggles to the ring, but gestures for Lance Storm to come out. He's on one knee, but he manages to pull himself up. It's pure adrenaline that is carrying him through. Shane asks Arn, the experienced head, can they do this? But Arn says he's stood up and he's got fight in him, so let him fight. We then cut back to the ring, Shane sending Lance Storm out there, and it's a 79 rated match. Really happy with that. Probably the best match that we've done so far. We sent them out there to steal the show. RVD with an 82, absolutely incredible. There's no stopping this guy. And this gets a 79 despite the fact that one of the road agent notes is to keep Rob Van Dam strong. So if we'd have just done this and you think of this as a potential main event match in the future, I think that could have got an absolutely brilliant rating. We've also got creative finishes in there that we can play with. So if we do run this back for a third time, I think we're talking mid to high 80s here. RVD incredible, but the story of the match is Lance Storm taking control. RVD just will not give up, and we get probably a couple of minutes of an RVD comeback. Lance Storm, the vast majority of the offense is his, but RVD comes back and jumps up to the top rope to hit the 5-star frog splash, but there's just something in that moment. Maybe his head goes a little bit dizzy and wobbly, and he kind of loses his balance and falls down. Lance then kind of just does a tight roll up on Rob Van Dam, so he doesn't even have to do a move. RVD's kind of lost his bearings, and it's that he's gone 10 minutes, but the adrenaline has eventually worn off, and the reality of what he's just been put through comes back, especially that Lance has spent maybe 6 or 7 minutes of the match absolutely beating him down. So a bit of a, not underwhelming finish, but what's the word? Anticlimactic finish, but it's putting across the genuine concern that we now have for Rob Van Dam. He lost his balance at that vital moment, and Kelly says that he has seen that drug, adrenaline, carry men through many, many fights with broken necks, with torn muscles, but the come down is like no other, and unfortunately for Rob Van Dam, that come down came at the worst possible time. A minute later, and we might have a new United States champion, but again, serious, grave concern for RVD as he is this time stretchered out of the building. We take a couple of minutes on this segment just to make sure that we're putting over how serious this is. We're not quite doing those hushed tone voices that are a little bit distasteful, but the commentators are hoping that this isn't too serious of a situation and that RVD gets the help that he needs. The only man seeming entirely unbothered by this is Lance Storm. In fact, the only emotion he shows is to get a little bit annoyed when after the match the referee's still checking on RVD rather than giving him his title and raising his arm. After the break, the commentators give an update on RVD and promise that as soon as we get any more news, we will come back with that. We do lose heat to the storyline with this, but again, RVD's lost 2 matches to Lance Storm now, but I don't feel like we've taken anything away from him yet, and I feel that we're making people want RVD as the champion more rather than him just coming in and winning it on his first or second attempt. You might disagree with that, but I think no shine has been taken off Rob Van Dam, and hopefully this is only building fan support for him. That's my perspective anyway. Maybe people will disagree, and that's totally cool. We then get David Flair interviewed as we look to switch gears, and it's hard to move on from a moment like that, but Scott Hudson asks him about his challenge of Big Van Vader next week on WCW Nitro. Flair says that he's been asked a lot of questions this week, but they mainly boil down to, what the hell are you thinking? David says that when his father stepped across the ring from Vader at Starrcade 1993, a lot of people asked him the exact same thing. Next week, David Flair intends to shock the world and prove what his last name is all about. He is not afraid of Big Van Vader. As he says this last line, he's distracted. He was a little distracted throughout, but now he's very distracted and asks something funny to somebody off screen. Walking into the shot, Steve Corino, Bob Sapp and Dawn Marie. Bob towers over David Flair to intimidate him, as Steve says, "Not funny, sad," and walks off. So Steve Corino picking a fight with David Flair there and actually gaining heat to the Family Legacy storyline, shockingly with a 33 rating. Absolutely terrible signs there, but it's just setting up something as an introduction for Steve Corino. He's going to be going on to bigger and better things, but with Flair and Vader next week, it was a good way to just remind you Steve Corino's here. He debuted earlier tonight, and then it's sometimes nice after somebody debuts to give him a little interaction with somebody on the roster. This segment's really bad as well. Is it just that you put Billy Kidman in something and it sucks? I don't know. Thankfully, we've got time to build this storyline back up. Footage airs recapping what went down with Rob Van Dam earlier. You have to follow up something like what happened to Rob Van Dam, the attack from Mike Awesome, his valiant attempt to become United States Champion, and his concerning collapse towards the end of the match. We see that moments ago, Rob Van Dam was loaded into an ambulance with WCW official walking down alongside the stretcher, and of course the commentators explain after, and this is a line further down, but I'll say it now. At the Big Bang, Fit Finlay had his career ended by Mike Awesome, who attacked him following a match with Lance Storm, so this is personal, not just because he's been through stuff like this, but specifically with Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, so there's an extra emotional weight for Fit Finlay, and it looks like he's going to join RVD for the ride when a concerned Billy Kidman turns up, and he says he's going to go with him. He's Rob's friend. Finlay steps aside and allows this. Now, this is because we have something planned later, and I kind of need an excuse why Billy Kidman wouldn't get involved or why he wouldn't come out and confront somebody. So, yeah, this was a late addition, to be fair. I'd booked the show, and then I was kind of like, well, why wouldn't Billy Kidman do that in this situation? So, yeah, that's why Billy Kidman is the one, rather than Fit Finlay, who goes with him in the hospital. But I do want to do something with Finlay in the next few weeks, I think. Diamond Dallas Page is interviewed in the back, says that he heard what Kurt Hennig had to say earlier, and that's cool with him. You might see I've stuck another segment in here, and this is with the exact same purpose of the Billy Kidman segment. This is to get DDP out of the way for what happens later. Kurt accepted his challenge, and while there may not have been a conclusive finish to their match, he does think they will meet again eventually, and by the sounds of it, it could be for the World Heavyweight Championship, as DDP looks to turn his attention to those jackoffs Mike Sanders and Reno, and Anderson comes in and takes him off to one side and tell him that the tyres of his car have been slashed, and a couple of people said they saw Mike and Reno running from the arena just after that. DDP is furious and goes off to check on his vehicle. Scott Hudson says that his question about the World Heavyweight Championship match might have to wait and sends back to ringside. We then go into the World Heavyweight Championship match. The creative finish was a success, but it only gets a 66. Now, that is disappointing, but I understand why, because, well, it's my booking essentially. So what we want to do, Buff Bagwell comes in like a house of fire. He is bringing that aggressiveness. He is bringing that intensity, and that's actually what cost him. So he's laying into Booker in the corner. The referee pulls him away. He's taking Booker T into the corner again, and it is like the commentator's going, he means business tonight. The referee pulls him away. It happens a third time, and Buff Bagwell is absolutely furious with this and tells the referee, touch me again and you're in trouble. Booker T then hits Buff Bagwell with a bookend. Now, because it's only the first or second move that he's taken from Booker, he does actually get up from this, but Booker is ready to aim for the scissors kick. Buff does get his head out of the way, but when he spins back around, Booker hits another bookend and pins him for the 1-2-3. A 1 minute and 38 match. After that build-up of Buff Bagwell, after the tease that I did that he may become the World Heavyweight Champion, it is a very short match and a very shocking moment, hopefully. I know WCW did these short matches, but you would expect like even maybe 8 minutes for this main event. We've given it 2. Hopefully that gets across the shock, and hopefully the commentators can do just that as well. Booker T himself can't quite believe how quickly he managed to get the job done, and Buff rolls to the outside, face down on the protective mat, and while it's not that long before he's conscious again, he just doesn't want to face the fans, he doesn't want to face Booker, he doesn't want to face the world, he just wants the ground to eat him up. An absolute humiliation. Booker T is kind of celebrating a little longer than one might expect. We thought the match would end, you get a Booker celebration and that show over, but the fact is, we've got a 2-minute main event, there's 5 minutes left of the show or whatever. However, New Blood Rising, the commentators kind of start signing off, but the night isn't over here. Two men, more opportunistic than anybody else on this roster, decide that this is their moment. Lance Storm and Mike Awesome come out. Mike literally walking over Buff on the way to their ring. Even more humiliation for Buff Bagwell. Booker T then looks to take the fight to the two men, but Team Canada lay out the World Heavyweight Champion. Mike Awesome hitting an awesome bomb in the middle of the ring to add that exclamation mark. Lance Storm stands over the World Heavyweight Champion and the World Heavyweight Championship beside him, raising his US title high in the air. The commentators sign off on New Blood Rising, putting over that the two men have staked their claim above all others tonight. This is the second special episode of Nitro, both of which have ended with Lance Storm and Mike Awesome standing tall. So a big night for these two men, and you might wonder why we're bringing the US champion and the world champion into the same storyline, but we will come to that later. Even in his own humiliation though, Buff Bagwell has become an afterthought. So I did go back and forth on this. I always had the idea that I wanted the special episodes, the Great American Bash, and then this New Blood Rising one to end with Lance Storm and Mike Awesome standing tall, because they're in that upper mid-card position and I'm desperate to establish them higher on the card. But then I thought, if we're going for a big shocking moment for Buff and then we're overshadowing it with this, does that take away from the moment? Now, the follow-up to this is all about Buff's humiliation and how he's feeling about it, how it affects him as a character. So I'm thinking that actually it doesn't really matter on the night so much as it will matter how he reacts next week and going forward. I know it looks like I hate Buff Bagwell. He's probably my favourite character to book at the minute, and I just think, yeah, going forward, he's going to be a really interesting character. It's a good segment to end the show as well. Hopefully establishing new blood at the top of the card in Lance Storm and Mike Awesome after what they did to RVD earlier. These guys have a really bad reputation now. I'm hoping that this is giving them real heat. The things that they're doing to RVD and now taking out our World Heavyweight Champion. Plus, I'm not sure when it's going to be, but Booker T and RVD v Lance Storm and Mike Awesome I think would be a really cool match to run. It's all about cool factor with our top faces for me. Rob Van Dam, Booker T, Natural Born Thrillers, even Sugar Shane hopefully. I want us to seem like the cool company essentially. WWF have got their established names and we're kind of redefining what WCW was from being the old boys club to actually being these really relatable, fun, cool characters. Hopefully that is New Blood Rising done. I'm happy with that show. Really solid all around. The ratings, seeing RVD and Lance Storm getting what I think will be our best match so far. I'm not sure that's the best episode of Nitro just yet, but I will just double check where things stand, where are our top 100s. So yeah, it's third to be fair, so we've had a couple of better shows than that, and I forgot that the Kanyon RVD was only as good as RVD v Chavo from the Big Bang. That probably had the pay-per-view bonuses though, to be fair. Yeah, no complaints whatsoever. The main event didn't rate well, but it wasn't going to rate well because I took the booking choice to make it a 2-minute main event. I don't hate Buff Bagwell, I promise, but we are going to now go through to the next episode of Nitro. I'm going to save it and then I'm going to make a backup save just in case I lose anything or anything goes drastically wrong in between. And we do actually have a signing. Is it just one signing I'm going to make this week or is it more than one? Now there is somebody who I'm looking to bring in pretty soon actually, but the person who I am looking to bring in this week for next week's show is Nelson Knight, and he is going to be getting hopefully an exclusive written contract. We'll go for a per month deal because I might need him on house shows and whatnot when we start running them. I'll try and not cover his travel and we'll offer him that. I'm happy with that as a deal. $10,000 a month, yeah, that's completely fine. Nelson Knight, we'll hear back from him hopefully within a few days. I think this is a pretty good opportunity for him after his WWF release. Who else is there that I wanted to look at? Just while it's in my mind, I'm going to stick Brian Christopher on the shortlist. I don't think we need any more debuts. I mean, I remember saying a few weeks ago I don't want to sign new people every week, and then I don't think there's been a video where I've not negotiated with people. I know some have only been one-time deals, but I'm kind of going against my own words, but I do still feel like we have a decent sized roster, and those guys who aren't being used, the guys who are constantly on pre-shows and stuff like that, hopefully I'll get a B show and it'll help us out with that. The cruiserweights I'm struggling with, I'm going to be honest. Again, these wrestlers like to make me sweat, don't they? Maybe I need to start hiring people before I book the show, maybe 2 weeks in advance. But I don't really like having people hired too far in advance, because then you just risk upsetting them or having to leave them off shows and stuff. Now, he has left it really, really late, and if Nelson Knight doesn't get back to me here, I'm going to be pretty annoyed with him, to be fair, and I might even pull out the deal, because I do want him to debut on this episode of Nitro. Very tense moments here as we go through to Wednesday the 15th of August. We have a decision. That is a relief, I have to admit, and I will now complete the signing of Nelson Knight. We are going to go by the Nelson Knight name for him, and the return of Dustin Rhodes. Let's offer him exclusive written, and I'll go a year with Dustin Rhodes, because I think he's a big enough name that he can demand that. $15,900. We do want to bring Dustin Rhodes in, and I don't want to risk having the same situation, and I think I'm going to go and negotiate a deal with Dusty Rhodes. He's obviously not going to take an exclusive written deal. We can keep Dallas Page happy there, and we're just going to do per show for him. I'm wondering whether we just do a handshake ongoing deal for Dusty Rhodes. That might just suit him. He's running his own company, so we just say, we've got you on the roster. When we need you, we'll call you. I didn't even consider you as a wrestler, to be fair, no disrespect. So my intention will be to use you everything but house shows. We're never going to book him on a B show, let's be fair. So yeah, we'll go for Dusty Rhodes. And what I might actually do is, actually no, I'm going to leave it there. End of the video. Thank you for watching. WCW Nitro up next. The debut of Nelson Knight that you've got to look forward to. So I think it's a really, really good role that we've got for what I feel is one of the most physically impressive, or I don't know if impressive is the word, to be fair, but wrestling, a big part of it is about just these absolute larger than life people, and I'd be interested in people's opinions on this. But to me, I'd say there's an argument that Nelson Knight has the most striking look in wrestling history. I don't know what his menace is in the game. Actually, I'm waffled on. I've already done the sign-off here, and now I'm going into something else. 85 understates it. Perhaps the idea that he's not that fast means that he's not as scary as some other people. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back next time with the debut of Nelson Knight. If that's not a draw, then nothing is. Cheers.